SaaS architectural features. In this section, we will look at the various architectural features that should be present in a SaaS application. In the last section, we looked at several SaaS products and services that are there in the marketplace. We looked at several categories of these products and several examples of these products. And there were some common themes, some common patterns in terms of characteristics or architectural features for a SaaS application. In this section, I'm going to outline some of those key characteristics, architectural characteristics of a SaaS application. So what are the objectives? In this section, we'll look at the SaaS architectural features and characteristics. We'll also look at the SaaS adoption drivers, also SaaS adoption challenges. We'll look at SaaS criticism, the classic SaaS criticism, and what open SaaS is and how it solves the SaaS criticism problem. Here are the SaaS architectural features. What do I mean by architectural features? If you're going to be building a SaaS platform, if you're going to be building a SaaS application on top of an IaaS or PaaS platform, then these are the different characteristics that you want to keep in mind as you're building your application. And they are multi-tenancy, configuration and customization, accelerated feature delivery, open integration protocol, collaborative and social functionality, distribution, data escrow, SIP, and pricing. Let's look at these criteria or features or architectural characteristics of a SaaS application one by one. Multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy is a very vital architectural characteristic of a SaaS application. It is a shift from designing isolated single-tenant applications. Now, what do I mean by isolated single-tenant applications? A single application that's isolated with its own database used by a single user. That would be an isolated single-tenant application. Every user will have their own application copy and their own database. That would be the single user, single-tenant application. In this model, no two applications communicate with each other, no two users can collaborate with each other. Whereas a multi-tenant characteristics of an application involves one application instance that must be able to accommodate multiple users, and these multiple users can be coming from different companies and maybe coming at the same time. It requires an architecture that maximizes the sharing of resources across the tenants. Now, what do I mean by sharing of resources? Resources such as the database, the storage, the computation, the network communication, the bandwidth, everything needs to be shared by all these different users. So when you're building a SaaS application, multi-tenancy becomes important, and you have to handle multi-tenancy at many different levels. You have to handle it at the user interface level, you have to handle it at the business logic level, the data model level, and also at the access control level. So the idea here is that you'll have one application, you'll have one database, and then you'll have multiple users that may be coming across these different companies to access the application. And in the database also, it'll look like a single database, but it'll be kind of partitioned, shared, so that everybody can see only their own data. And the others can see your data only if it is being shared by the original owner of the data. Configuration and customization. In a SaaS application, the customer can set configuration options, which means you should have the capability for the user to configure the options and the parameters that affect the functionality of the SaaS application and the user interface of the SaaS application. The app can be customized to the degree that it was designed for. And what do I mean by that? You can have the ability to change the look and feel of the application by allowing the users to upload their custom logo or their custom color scheme. You can have the ability to add extra fields or attributes. So whenever you have a SaaS application that may have to take a form filled by a user, the user can suggest what the extra fields there may be. There may be some basic fields that may be there as part of the registration process, but there may be other fields that the user may want to add, and that should be possible. Ability to customize field validation as the new fields are being added. They should be able to customize the validation of the fields in terms of length, size, and the values. The ability to change the process flow. If it's one of those workflow applications, you should be able to control the process flow, the workflow of the application. So these are all some examples of customization that you can give in your SaaS application for the SaaS users. There is also accelerated feature delivery. The SaaS applications are typically updated more frequently than your traditional software. When a traditional software is sold to the customer, they get updated only after a long time, maybe once a year or maybe once in 18 months. The life cycle, the software life cycle or the release management is much longer. Whereas when it comes to the SaaS model, it's much shorter. Usually updates take place once a week or maybe even twice a week, once a month, so it's pretty fast. Well, why is that? Some of the reasons are, first of all, the updates are really not decided by the customers. In fact, it's decided by the app owner. They decide when the updates need to happen and they execute it. The provider does it. The app provider or the app owner does that and doesn't really ask the end customer, hey, can I upgrade the SaaS service? It's all done seamlessly behind the scene. The app has single configuration. Typically, there is one installation and there is one configuration that makes deployment faster. Whereas in a traditional model, you have different installations, different configuration, and different customer sites. That makes it very difficult to upgrade, especially when you're going to be doing customer support for those applications. The app vendor does not spend resources updating and maintaining older versions. That's very true of traditional software, where the app vendor has to maintain 3-4 versions of the release because their customers haven't really upgraded yet. Since there is only one version, he doesn't really have to worry about it. The app vendor has access to all the customer data, expediting design and regression testing. The app vendor has access to all the data because the data is in the cloud. And so the app vendor, as they upgrade, they can verify that everything is working because they have the access to the data and they can actually go ahead and test the application with the old data. So that's a good thing. The app vendor has access to user behavior within the app. The app vendor typically has some kind of an analytics tool with which the user is monitored in terms of what features they're using, what are the most popular features, what are the least used features, what features the users are having trouble with, and they can actually improve the application. And based upon this, they can actually make changes to the application and improve the application and redeploy the application, to be precise. There's also accelerated feature delivery because many of the SaaS vendors typically follow agile software development methodologies and also DevOps methodologies. That makes for an accelerated feature delivery. Open integration protocols. Since SaaS apps cannot access any of the company's internal systems, and they cannot access any of the company's internal systems because they are outside in the cloud. So they often offer APIs for integration. So this is an important characteristic when you're building your SaaS application. You want to provide these APIs, these services available through an API, so it can be integrated from within the enterprise and called upon to get data back and forth. So that would be something that you may want to design for in your SaaS application. And you may want to design these APIs over HTTPS for security, and of course use REST and SOAP as the communication mechanisms. This has actually spawned a development of mashups. Many organizations are having SaaS services, but they also have software within their company. So they create these lightweight apps that combine the data and the presentation and functionality from multiple services. And these services could be in-house services. These services could be services that are in the cloud. They kind of combine all these things to create a compound service, and which is what we call mashups. Mashups is a way by which you can bring different services together into a single application. Many of the companies are actually doing that. Collaborative and social functionality. Inspired by the online social networks like Facebook, Twitter, many organizations, especially SaaS organizations, are adding collaboration and sharing features. These collaboration and sharing features allow the users within an organization to communicate and share. It also allows users across organizations to communicate and share. For example, when you have CRM software or supply chain management software, your suppliers and your consumers can all be part of the same ecosystem, and they can communicate with each other. So it kind of brings a bunch of parties together. There is also the SaaS project management example where collaboration features are built in project management. The users can add their own tasks, their own plans. They can discuss their issues. They can vote on various features. There's a lot of things that can be done with social in terms of SaaS offering. And the reason for that is multiple users are accessing the system, and multiple users across organizations are also accessing the system. Distribution. With SaaS, there is no physical media like discs or CDs, so none of those things are needed anymore. It's distributed instantaneously over the web. That's one of the greatest things about the web. And so it puts pressure on the traditional model. In the traditional model, especially if you have to buy Oracle software, you really have to download the latest version of the software, install the software. In the olden days, it had to be that you have to be sent the new disks for the software. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So definitely a much better model. It's instantaneous delivery of the new software. You don't even have to install it because it's automatically provisioned for you through normal upgrade process by the SaaS provider. There is also data escrow. As you're building your SaaS applications, you may want to think about data escrow. What do I mean by this? Data escrow is really the process of keeping a copy of critical SaaS application data with an independent third party. If you think about it from a consumer's perspective, from a SaaS user's perspective, they are putting all their data in your SaaS platform. They typically are concerned about their data. What would happen if their data is lost? What would happen if your company goes out of business? So they would like to see their data be escrowed into a third party. So you may want to think about, as you're building a SaaS product or a SaaS service, about data escrow. Maybe work with some data escrow company where you are telling the customer, look, from time to time we'll make a copy of your data and get it copied into this other location in standard format so that you can move to a different organization if you want to. Of course, nobody wants their customers to go to a different company, but this is something customers typically demand, and that's something you may want to think about when you're building your SaaS application. This data escrow concept is similar to source code escrow. Many organizations that rely upon third-party software also ask for source code escrow. They basically say, look, we don't really need the source code for your software. I know we are using your software, but just in case when you go out of business, we are screwed. So we want you to take your source code and leave it at the company that manages source code escrow, which is a third-party independent company. It's a similar concept when it comes to data escrow for SaaS applications. So this allows companies to protect all the data that resides in the SaaS applications. Like I said, many reasons for considering data escrow: concerns about bankruptcy of SaaS provider, unplanned service outages, complying to their own data governance and standards, and also improved analytics against their SaaS data. SaaS integration platforms. When it comes to SaaS, there are different organizations, different SaaS providers that are offering these different services. And so there is clearly fragmentation in the marketplace. You're getting your HR software from one company, you're getting your CRM software from another company, you're getting your online docs from another company, you're getting email from another company. Now all these things need to be integrated. So there is fragmentation which needs to be integrated. So there's this concept called SaaS integration platforms, or SIPs, which allow the subscribers to access multiple SaaS applications through a common platform. This is considered to be a third wave in software adoption as SaaS because it allows an organization to go to one vendor and have the different products coming from these different vendors. Companies like Zoho, Sutisoft, and several other companies like Oracle and Microsoft are also doing this. They are actually buying up other companies and kind of providing a comprehensive solution. Some companies are buying up other companies to provide a comprehensive solution, integration platform solutions. Some companies are simply integrating it using SIP, which is the SaaS integration platforms, allowing different products to communicate with each other. Google Docs can talk to CRM, and CRM can talk to Facebook, and things like that. So they're offering these integrated services using SIP. Pricing. Pricing is an important aspect when it comes to SaaS. One of the primary reasons people want to go to SaaS platform is because they don't want to spend the infrastructure cost for the hardware and software and then the normal operations cost. That's assuming that you buy the hardware and the software. What if you have to custom build your software? That's expensive. So many organizations are saying, hey, you know what? I don't need to buy anything. I don't even need to build anything. All I want to do is lease. It's a much nicer model for them. It follows the format of an operational expenditure versus a capital expenditure, which is much, much more difficult to convince when it comes to convincing the CFO. And so when it comes to pricing, you may want to think about monthly, annual pricing model, price applications based on some usage parameters such as charge based upon the number of users using the application. So for every user, you may charge a price. If it's 10 users, then you may want to bring down the price. You can also charge per transaction that they're doing. For example, credit card companies, they charge per transactions. When I say credit card companies, SaaS providers that allow you to charge credit cards if you're going to be doing e-commerce. That's what I mean by credit card companies. They charge per transaction. Also, due to low cost of setting up a new customer, it really doesn't take much. Customers come online, they come to your site, they register themselves. You can offer what is called a freemium model, where you give them some basic services for free and then you charge them for upgrade. That would be another model that you can think of. A classic example is LinkedIn. The basic LinkedIn is for free, but then if you want the mechanism to communicate with others in a private manner, if you want to look at other people's data, then you start charging money for that. Right? So you start paying money for that matter. So you can, well, how do you make money in the first place? Well, if you're going to be giving them a freemium model, you may want to show them ads. So that's a model of pricing that you may want to think about. Okay, so those were the SaaS architectural features and capabilities. Now let's look at SaaS adoption drivers. There are many technologies that have come into place in the marketplace that have made SaaS possible and that are helping with SaaS adoption. The first is growing web-based user interfaces. More and more users are much more familiar with web user interface. It's much easier to learn a web interface than a proprietary software. So that's a good thing. That's great for SaaS. And that's why many of the SaaS providers offer services over the open web. There is also standardization of web technologies. For example, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, HTML5, Ajax, all these technologies that have standardized over time, over several years, have made web a great place for building UI applications. There is also standard communication protocol. We of course have the TCP protocol, but then people can build custom protocols. But the cool thing is that HTTP, and especially HTTPS, which is secure HTTP, has become an important aspect of web stack, that it allows a lightweight mechanism to communicate. It allows for a standard mechanism, standard communication protocol for clients and servers to communicate with each other. So this standard communication model or protocol has also helped with SaaS adoption. There is also standard application protocol. Built on top of HTTP and HTTPS is REST and SOAP services that allows you to build an API application interface so that you can do mashups. So that's another great thing when it comes to SaaS adoption. That's one of the drivers for SaaS adoption. There's also broadband access. More and more people are coming online. More and more people have access to broadband. And so they can work from anywhere. They can work from the beach, they can work from home, they can work from the bar, they can work from a restaurant, they can work on their iPhone, they can work on an iPad. So the broadband access has definitely given rise to SaaS adoption. There is also creation of newer clients like mobile, which are also coming into the marketplace. Users want access to their applications through non-traditional devices, such as the mobile phones. And so you may have noticed when we were looking at all these SaaS vendors, they were actually offering services that would be accessed through your mobile phones, through mobile apps. They're actually offering mobile app solutions also to access their SaaS services. In terms of SaaS adoption challenges, data security and privacy has always been a concern. You are putting your data into the cloud. People are concerned about that. There is also the inability by the SaaS provider to meet the SLA or the latency. The customer may have very strict, stringent SLAs that the SaaS provider may not be able to meet. There is also limited customization. Of course, when you're building multi-tenant applications that's being built for multiple users across multiple organizations, you have to kind of keep the best features, and those specialized one-off features are not going to be possible. So there may be some limitations in terms of customization of the SaaS software. There is also integration challenges. Some business applications, whether it's in-house business applications or SaaS business applications, may need integration with the data that is in the SaaS. Sometimes this data may be too large, or it may be too sensitive to be moved back and forth. It may be costly to do that, may be risky to do that, so that prevents basically some integration. And this leads to integration challenges, and that may lead to SaaS adoption as a challenge. There is also constitutional data loss. When you put your data in the cloud, you have no idea where your data is. You don't know if your data is in the North America or South America, it's in Europe, it's in Africa. Where is the data? In which country is it? And different countries have different laws. You may be bound by regulations that you may have to keep the data in the United States. Well, if you go to the SaaS provider, you have no idea where the data is. So that could potentially be a problem. There's also the problem of switching vendors. If you decide to switch vendor because you don't like the features that this provider is giving you, or maybe you don't like the SLA that this provider is giving you, well, all your data is sitting over here, and if there is no way to take all your data and move it out, that's a problem. There is also forced adoption to new releases. The SaaS provider or the SaaS vendor may choose to release the new SaaS product whenever they wish, and you're kind of forced to start using this new release. You have no choice of saying, hey, you know what, I want to be in the old release because I like it that way, or I'm not used to the new model. You can't say any of that stuff. You're just forced. You have to adopt the new release. That's the and that may be a problem, that some people may not like that. So that's a problem when it comes to adoption of SaaS. The vendor decides to EOL the software. It's possible that a SaaS vendor might say, you know what, this is a business that we don't want to be in. Then what do? Well, you have all your data over there. Well, you have to move your data out. Well, what if you can't move your data out? So again, this is another problem when it comes to the SaaS adoption. And finally, internet speed versus speed of internal networks. If all your data is on the internet, in the cloud, and in order to do anything, you have to be accessing it through the internet, through the network, then you could potentially have a problem, especially if you have a slow network. When you are within the company, you have much faster network, you have gigabyte network. Now, when you're on the internet, your response time may not be as good, and that may affect productivity. And so this can also lead to some SaaS adoption challenges. Well, there has been some criticism about SaaS too. Richard Stallman of Free Software Foundation, he refers to SaaS as SaaS, S-A-A-S-S at the end, which he calls service as a software substitute. He says with SaaS, the users do not have a copy of the executable file. It is on the server where the users can see or touch it. Thus, it is impossible for them to ascertain what it really does and impossible to change it. SaaS inherently gives the server operator the power to change the software in use or the user's data being operated on. And it's completely true. Richard Stallman is all about free software, and he doesn't really like the SaaS model, and so he criticizes the SaaS model this way. Well, there are some counter arguments to this. Drupal Gardens, a free web hosting platform based on open source Drupal, is a classic example of open source software. WordPress.com, a free web blog hosting platform based on open source WordPress, is also a classic example of it. They both are SaaS services that are built on open source software. And so that has led to this new definition of SaaS or new theme of SaaS called open SaaS. Open SaaS really is open software as a service, which refers to software as a service based on open source code, open source operating system, open source server, open source database, pretty much open source everything. This is a term that was coined by Dries Buytaert, who is the creator of Drupal, content management system. He's right here. He created Drupal Gardens. DrupalGardens.com is really a SaaS service for building Drupal-based software, but everything is based upon open source software. So if you want to, you can always take Linux operating system, install Drupal on it, which is open source, Linux, which is open source, MySQL, which is open source, and get the entire thing working on your own. You're not actually relying upon a proprietary software. WordPress.com has also done the same thing. They offer WordPress software as a service on WordPress.com based upon Linux, based upon WordPress.org open source software. So in summary, when it comes to SaaS architectural features, multi-tenancy, configuration and customization, accelerated feature delivery, open integration protocol, collaborative and social functionality, distribution, data escrow, SaaS integration protocol, and pricing are some of the key characteristics or architectural features for SaaS application. You should keep this in mind when you're building your SaaS application, or you should keep this in mind when you're evaluating a SaaS product. When it comes to adoption drivers, the growing web UI, standardization of web technologies, broadband access, standard communication protocols, standard application protocols, creation of newer clients like mobile and acceptance of that are all factors that are helping for SaaS adoption. Adoption challenges, data security concern, unable to meet the SLA of the client, limited customization, integration challenges because of volume of data or sensitivity of the data, constitutional data loss, switching vendors, that is moving from one vendor to the another vendor, which is a problem. All these things are adoption challenges when it comes to SaaS adoption. Criticism: SaaS operators offer service based on proprietary systems. There is no transparency. That was one of the biggest criticism. And the answer to that is open SaaS, which is really SaaS based upon open source software.